Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. For our folks out there, when we talk about, these behavior versus outcome-based goals, I think the key too is just, making it all work together, right? What we just talked about, making it work together with the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, the behaviors, the actions that we're going to put in place, and then really taking a look at how we feel through that process, and making sure that we're trying to stay as positive as possible. So that's really the key, is kind of melding those two things together. Often, again, you can get to the root of the problem by changing your behavior and then watch as your outcomes change. So as I start changing my thoughts, changes my feelings, changes the behaviors that I start taking, then you'll definitely start to see much, much more positive results from that. Sometimes it's hard to kind of separate the two of those things, but that's okay. Like, give yourself some grace through that process. Just don't lose sight of the fact that your performance really is a mix of both of those things.
Absolutely.
The outcome that I'm looking for, and then the behaviors themselves. And just having that right mindset, man, is just so important as you're working hard to press forward and succeed and achieve, that goal that you're trying to achieve. So make them work together, and you'll find yourself having a lot more success. And again, it just being a much more pleasurable process throughout.
Yeah, I
What
like
kind
that
of?
actually.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I like that actually because you talked about falling in love with the process. You talked about just making it a more pleasurable process, and I think like for me, right, I'm using our fitness goal and our fitness commitment because it's top of mind. We just kind of talked about it, and it's pretty common commonplace, especially now coming into the top of the year. People usually have fitness goals, and I think even now more so than ever. I saw some post people saying, hey, I'm gonna try to lose the quarantine 15 or something like that. So when I think about just kind of my own personal journey, our own personal journeys, I know for a fact, like while I have the feelings that I have about the meal preparation component that I need to work through from a behavioral perspective, what continues to keep me on this path and propel me towards achieving that outcome, the desired outcome of body composition and all that stuff is I'm in love with the process. I'm not even in love with the end result, the output. Like the body composition and how I look, like that's not what motivates me. It literally is you and I kind of talked about this just a little bit a couple weeks back, but it's the mental discipline, the game that occurs there, right? Like that process, the process of all right, when I'm getting ready to go out or go work out, like, did I do everything to prepare myself to dominate my workout, right? To win my workout, because it's me versus me. It's me versus my preparation. It's me versus, the game plan that I've put together, and me versus my ability to execute on the game plan that I outlined. And then, once I get into the gym and I'm running or I'm working out or whatever the case may be, it's being able to complete everything that I laid out to get completed, and knowing that there's going to be a moment where I'm going to be struggling with the rep, and I said I was going to do 10, but I only got 8 clean right now. Like, I got to get these last 2. Am I going to get these last 2 and mentally dig and push myself to get those last 2, or am I going to end up succumbing to the workout and the weight and being defeated, right? And it's kind of that mental aspect that I've fallen in love with, where I get hype off of not being defeated by the 2 reps. Like that's the motivation for me, and then that ultimately ties into getting me closer to my outcome-based goal, right? My outcome-based goal of how I want to look in the body composition, all the other stuff. But the pleasure for me is in that process, like falling in love with that process of hitting the gym, having the music up, working out, pushing myself to the point where it's like, man, I don't even know if I can get this. Then mentally challenging myself to say, you have no choice but to get this, and then manifesting that, right? And so I think the key that you've touched on, which I just want to continue to reiterate for our legacy leaders, as you're thinking about this, and again, it doesn't have to be in the fitness space, right? We're just using that as a vehicle to kind of connect with you guys and relate to what we currently have been talking about and focusing on. But it really is you have to be firing on all three cylinders, right? Like we talked about the behavior base and the outcome base and making those things work in tandem. The glue that really continues to kind of make those things gel and work in tandem is the mental aspect of it, like the mental component of it. When we talked about the behavior, the mental component of that is ensuring that you are being critical and going back and assessing what triggers, mental triggers are in play that causes you to be in a certain mind, a headspace, a certain mindset, right, before you have to tackle the mundane behavior, right? So like you have to be able to master yourself from a mental perspective there, and then from an outcome-based perspective, the mental component is, in not just defining your goal, right? Because you need to be thoughtful about how you do that and what you're committing to, right? But then mentally ensuring that you are measuring and taking stock of your progress along the way. What is my game plan? Is my game plan working as intended? Am I starting to head closer to my goal, 3 weeks in, or am I further away from my goal than where I started? And then if I am further away, then what do I need to change about my strategy, my approach, my behavioral component? Like that mental game is always in play. So especially, again, from a goal setting perspective as a leader and everything that we do, the mental component is the most important component of every single thing we do, from goal setting to time management to driving performance to change improvement, change management, all of that, right? And so you got to make sure that you're hitting on all three cylinders. And for me, a big part of that mental component again is being able to fall in love with the process.
Yeah, for sure. And I've just even today at I told you about the team meeting that we had at the end of the day at the job, and it was good that actually at some point the the topic of kind of getting counseling and see, just having conversations with people and talking through your feelings and your emotions and stuff like that, and just how beneficial that is. Um, but we can all see how we were affected, and I would say at times, and please don't mistake me because we've gone through some very, very difficult situations, but how we can let certain things affect us when we really do have control over our feelings, or how we allow in the number of ways that we're having information thrown at us, and how we put too much thought into this or into that. And again, those thoughts cause us to feel a particular way. And while there was a lot of tragedy and things that happened, over the last year, like there's some of us that while we saw those things and we felt those things, we talked about those things, and we mourned, when it was time to mourn, we were going through those situations, but like there was still a lot of positivity that came out of that, right? Because we're focusing on that mental aspect, not always perfect, not always doing that, but focusing on that mental aspect, and how can I do my best to control my mind? Because it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
They're my thoughts. And those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are creating my feelings. Nobody else makes me feel a particular way than myself. They may influence, but I'm still allowing that influence one way or another to come in. Um, I just encourage everybody, again, when we're talking about that discipline and that mental effort, is how do I feel those feelings, not try to push them to the side, so that I can learn to, one, realize where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do let that thought create this feeling and let that feeling slip in, how do I feel that? Because that's still my truth at that time. And learn to think about it, to feel it, and then to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To let it go, and then realize if that's a feeling that I don't want anymore, that I don't like, don't necessarily run from it. How do I again change those thoughts and think about that moment and that that time that created that thought that then created that feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just encourage everybody to think about that as we, again, look to keep things moving in a positive direction in this new year.
No, no, well said, man. I think what it comes down to, and I know you and I have kind of talked about this before, and I'll share with our legacy leader community is, our thoughts. Our thoughts are, to me, it's just like gasoline, right? Our thoughts are like gasoline, and just like gasoline in real life, right? If you pour it over something and just drench it and set it ablaze, it can consume, right? Or if you take that same gasoline, you put it in a tank and you ignite it, it can propel.
Yes.
Right. And so we have a decision to make every time that we are inundated with these things, and we have these thoughts that kind of rattle around in our brains. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to allow it to propel, or are we going to allow it to consume? Right? Everybody's making that choice every single day. There are definitely, there's been no shortage of images, situations, all of these things over this past year, and even leading up into this week, that we've all been consuming, we've all had to consume, and again, we're all faced with that same question: am I going to use this to propel me? Am I going to use this to consume me? Right, and I definitely think there's a difference. Propelling, when you think about propelling, using as as fuel, using that gasoline as fuel, it's about progress. It's about moving forward. It's about achieving.
Yes.
Right, and that can be in a multitude of places. It doesn't have to be just strictly tied to I want to propel, like I'm using all these things as fuel to propel me towards my fitness goal or my weight loss goal or my business goal. It doesn't have to be that. It can be in that specific area. If you're seeing these things that are triggering these feelings and these thoughts, when it comes to civic duty, civil unrest, and playing a part in my community, right? Like you can use that to propel you to take action, to do something about it, so that you are influencing your neighborhood and leading in your community, in your area, and being a steward of those that are around you, right? Or you can allow it to consume you. And to me, consuming is really more, it's not about progress, by any stretch of the imagination, right? It's really the opposite of progress. It's deterioration, right? When something is consuming you, right, it goes from, kind of thought to obsession to almost debilitating, right? Paralyzing, right? And so the challenge for all of us, as we've been consuming this media, inundated with these images, or as you think about your behavior-based goals and the triggers that you have, is once you've identified kind of that gasoline, right? Are you going to use it to propel? Are you going to use it to consume? Is it going to be fuel, or is it going to be paralyzing?
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.